Now, on the train, when I wanted anything, I wrote it out on a piece of paper. I had a little pad there. And I just tear it off. Want a hamburger, medium rare. I don't think I said that in those days, but it's the way it would have been now. But I would say a lot of extra mustard and a lot of salt and pepper. And I love pickles, but I really want the tomato stick on there. Well, I finally make it to Indianapolis. I see Mrs. Love. She drives me right to Circle Tower. So it's kind of a center circle right in the middle of Indianapolis. And all that was the ideal location in those days. That was it, Circle Tower. And the building was the building that Benjamin N. Bogue was in. Now he had a little office, which was one room by himself, kind of a small lobby area with some chairs, and then a little tiny room for Mrs. Love. That was it. And I was brought in. I'd never gone to 4 stories before in my life, but we were 4 stories up, and I can't remember the height of the building, but I think it was around 8 stories, maybe 10. But it was definitely the building at the time. I'm now in the room with Mr. Benjamin N. Bogue himself, the quack, the one that doesn't have any degrees. He's no good. We're better than he is. We have diplomas. And those diplomas that they had on stuttering were, as Shakespeare would say, all about nothing. Well, I hand him the check, a registered check, to him. And he looked at me and he said, "This check will prove to be the best investment you'll ever make in your life. Because when you leave here, you'll know how to deal with the speech block and what it takes to speak stutter-free." And there was a chair that I sat down, which faced him, and I put my head into my hands, and I was uncontrollable. I just bawled, because I had gone through so much, and so much was at stake. I either leave Indianapolis and go back, or I stay here. It's one of the two. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Doug. You can't have it both ways. And I'm going to go. I'm going all the way. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. That was Kipling from If, and that's where I was. Well, I never saw Mr. Bogue after that. I probably was in there at the most 15 minutes. He talked to me. I'd say he was nearing 80 years of age, 78, 76, somewhere in that neighborhood. He had a lot of white hair, and it was beautiful, beautiful white mane. Had a very soft look, a very tender look. And I was taken by the gentleness of his spirit. But he did emanate light. I could feel his light. I'm thinking right now of the words of Tennyson describing King Arthur in the great poem, epic poem, Idylls of the King. What the king so prized and overprized was gentleness. That was Benjamin Bogue. Now, Mrs. Love takes me. We go from the center of Indianapolis to on the outskirts of Indianapolis, of the center part of the town, not in a suburb by any way. It's still in the center part of the town, but it's on the outskirts. It's in the poor rent district. It's where the buildings had that tumble down look. And we went up a flight of stairs, boy, that we could hardly see. And it seemed to me that they weren't symmetrical. It just kind of had a little bit of a, you could tell that they'd been there for probably 100 years. And we get into the room. It's not much bigger than this whole room right here. And there was chairs, iron folding chairs, rimmed around the room. And at one end was a little platform of about 6 inches, and in the center was a microphone. And here were the students. And they were now taking turns speaking into that microphone. Now, I won't describe this part of it right now. I'll save that to when I find myself there. But I got to meet him, or I should say her. Now, she was, I've guessed at this, I'd say a good 72 years of age. She was as plain as any woman I've ever seen in my life. There's no makeup on her face, there's no lipstick or nothing. And she had, her hair was kind of in ringlets, but not real beautiful ringlets. It's just kind of shaggy ringlets. And she was blind. She couldn't see. But could she hear? Her dress was extremely plain, I'd say about 6 inches off the ground or the floor. And her voice was commanding, but not harsh. It was commanding but pleasant. She had a smile, and she expressed real excitement to having me join, because there were 3 students she was teaching. Now I became the 4th one. And so they had been there before me. There was one girl, and she had been there for quite a while. And evidently, I learned later that she was really having to struggle, but was making definite progress. But the progress was incremental and exceedingly slow, but it was definitely uphill. So time was on her side. So all she needed was the guts and the staying power to hang with it. Staying power, a lot of starting power in this world. Ain't much staying power when it gets down to it. Well, then she takes us to a place about a mile away, and this is the boarding house. Then I'm introduced there. We all have little rooms. We're just serve food family style. We have one meal in the morning and one meal at night. And we all shared the food. Well, to be honest with you, I was the youngest one. I'd wait. They'd all end up leaving, going. There'd be a little bit left over. I'd polish it all off. So all the food was consumed. I never left hungry. I was always just really, really full, comfortable. The idea is this. If you could say to me, well, what is the concept? They never gave us one piece of paper. We were never told what the concept was. We only would stand up there in front of that microphone. And the phenomenon is, and the concept is, that all stutters are filled with fear. And all books that have been written on the subject is that if we can take and minimize or mitigate the fear within one, proportionately, what would happen is that stuttering would reduce, consistent with the lessening of the fear. So you lessen your stuttering, pursuant to you lose the fear first, and then you'll lose stuttering second. Now, it wasn't until years later that I realized what really happened was this. What they did was they started you off so basically and so simple, is with like one syllable that you're able to say, and you take one breath of air to say that syllable, and you also say it within the time frame of about between 2 to 3 seconds. And what establishes rhythm in the body is that you swing your arm in a half circle. This is pretty important here. You got your fingers like this in your hand. You put these 3 fingers in your hand, and you have your forefinger and your thumb free. Then as you start to swing, these come together and you complete the sound like that. Then you open up, you breathe through the nose again, then, and this is a pause, and the pause is as long as you want it to be, and then you start that second sound or syllable. Now, some people stutter so severely they can't do that. What they do is mouth it. They don't utter a sound, they only pretend that they're saying, but they're mouthing it. But they're getting and learning the art of the swing and the art of the utterance. But they are mouthing the sound, and they exhale all the air without expressing a sound. Pause, go through that, and then they start over again. Now let me show you. You stop, hands like this. Breathe through the nose. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. My name. It has to be monotone. That is critical. Is Doug. You get the idea. Now, each person is a little bit differently, and it's kind of watching them each perform. They each perform in the morning and each perform in the night. If you got 4 students and you're going to be there 8 hours, then therefore it's 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. Or I should say an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. Practicing. So you start right off practicing. But the secret is this. When you go there, you go on a silence for 10 days. You utter nothing, not even a grunt, for 10 full days. You forget the past of what you were. Now you're recreating a new speech pattern. And the concept is this. What reduces fear, and the only thing that will reduce fear, is that you don't stutter. So by not stuttering, you reduce the fear. And what happens is that you establish within the brain a new speech center. Because your old speech center is nothing except spaghetti. And you can't smooth that out. You're not going to unspaghettyize that speech center. So you create a new speech center. And once you do that, you then are in the process of creating a new stutter-free speech habit, because stuttering is a habit. No one is born with stuttering. I started at age 5. If you've seen the movie The King's Speech, the Duke of York, who became George VI, started stuttering at age 8. So it varies. Now, the former head of the president of the University of Utah started to stutter his sophomore year in high school. Chase Peterson. And I've had many discussions with him. He's been in this house several times talking this whole subject with me. And so it is an unusual phenomenon, and it all varies. Therefore, I say this: if you have the power to start stuttering, like driving a car into a garage, you have the power to be able to back the doggone car out. And so you're not bit by a mosquito and now you stutter. It's how it begins, and that is not the issue. The only thing that counts is let's just back the doggone car out of the garage. And that's what it was all about with Bogue Institute, is backing the car out of the garage. Now let me put it to you this way. There's a scripture on this, which I think tells exactly what we're talking about. It's in the 28th chapter of Isaiah. Being a Mormon, we've been commanded over and over again to study the words of Isaiah. Great are the words of Isaiah. Isaiah is quoted in the New Testament more than any other Old Testament prophet. He is quoted more in the Book of Mormon than any other prophet, except those characters in the Book of Mormon, and on we go. But people can't understand Isaiah because Isaiah uses terminology in his day to explain our day. And he talks about Salt Lake City. And he talks about Utah. And he talks about America. And he talks about our opposition. But he doesn't use those words because those words didn't exist. So he uses words in his day. So when he talks about America, say America, he says Egypt. And that just gives you an idea. So now I'm in the 28th chapter. And in that 28th chapter of Isaiah, it talks about this. It talks about line upon line. Starts off by saying, for it is precept with precept. Precept with precept. He quotes that statement twice. Then he says line upon line and line upon line. He says that twice. And then he says here a little and there a little. And then he says, for with stammering lips will I teach this people in another tongue. What does that mean? But there it is. The whole formula is right there. Right there. The words of God through Isaiah. Now, precept means rule or a governing principle. So you got to follow a rule or a governing principle. Now, line upon line, that means practice. And here a little and there a little, that means that you're not going to have complete smooth sailing. But you'll learn the process in increments. And the key to the thing is to stick with it. And so with stammering lips means that you're not finished. Because with stammering lips, will I teach this people? And how is he going to do that? Is with another tongue. What's another tongue? Imagine two cylinders right here. One is stuttering. And every day that goes by you stutter, all you do is increase the severity of your habit. And therefore your stuttering becomes worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And all these books and everything that come out and all these teachers and professors in these universities don't understand that what you do is forget about that stammering column. Because you go over here and you create a new speech pattern. A new way to speak. It is another tongue, precisely. And then you establish this another tongue, and in that context, you're able to teach. Now, I admit that Moses stuttered. He did not learn another tongue, but nevertheless, he did. And because he had the power of the Spirit so strong, and he was given lucidity, the ability to speak in those moments, but he had to have Aaron to be his mouthpiece. And Aaron was his mouthpiece. But Moses called the shots. Now, it's that simple, isn't it? So all I'm doing here is creating another way to say another sound, and I go over to this second column, and by little tiny increments, it is you pile success upon success. You speak stutter-free, day after day, line upon line, month after month, line upon line, until you establish a way to speak stutter-free in another tongue. So if I have a relapse and stutter, I have gone back to my former way of speaking. It's all different. It is completely different. In this way, you probably have observed I speak deliberately. I basically do not run these syllables into each other too quickly, or otherwise I'm not in another tongue. And I see these words in my mind, in their syllable configurations, before I speak them, every word. That's in my brain. And did it happen overnight? No. But in 4 months, I was able to go back home. To go back home. And not have to stay. In 4 months. Then I started to practice, kept practicing. I had my bad moments, but they became less and less, and fewer, until I have experienced what very few people have ever experienced. I have spoken before thousands, tens of thousands.